step you take, I'll be watching you. Every single day, and every word you say, every game you play, every night you stay, I'll be watching you.
All the night is my world. City lights, painted girl. In a day, nothing matters. It's the night, time that flatters. In the night, no control. Through the wall, something's breaking. Wearing white as you're walking down the street of my soul. You take my self-control. You got me living only for the night. Before the morning comes the story told. You take my self-control. I live among the creatures of the night. I haven't got the will to try and fight. I can't say no tomorrow, so I guess I just believe it that tomorrow never comes. Nothing I know the night is not as it would seem. You take my stuff, you take my I must believe in something, so I make myself believe it, that this night will never go. Oh,
France's President Emmanuel Macron says he wants to hassle, or depending on the translation, piss off the unvaccinated. His comments once again leading to a second night of the suspension of the debate in the French Parliament on plans for the country's vaccine pass. We'll talk to our political editor Mark Parriman here on set shortly. The authorities in India's capital, Delhi, order people to stay home over coming weekends as COVID-19 cases there quadruple in just a week. We'll hear from our correspondent in New Delhi shortly. And the Kazakh president accepts the government's resignation after violent protests triggered by a fuel price increase rocked the oil-rich Central Asian country. Over 200 people arrested as police used tear gas and stun grenades. Good to have you with us. I'm Stuart Norval here on France 24. So there are differences then in the translation. Some going for the calmer phrase of Emmanuel Macron saying he wants to hassle people who are unvaccinated to get vaccinated. Others being much more blunt in that translation, saying simply he wants to piss off the unvaccinated. Whatever option you prefer, though, the French President Emmanuel Macron's words in an interview in a French newspaper have really divided opinion and led to more sharp-tongued debate in France's National Assembly as opposition lawmakers seized on those comments. It led to yet another suspension of the debate on France's new vaccine pass for a second night. Fraser Jackson reports.
With COVID cases at their highest ever levels, Emmanuel Macron's government is frantically trying to pass new restrictions through Parliament. But slangy comments he made about hassling the lives of the unvaccinated in a newspaper interview have sparked uproar from some MPs. His health minister took to the floor to defend the president's words.
If you read Wednesday's interview with President Macron in detail, you will see that the intention behind the move is to protect the public. We've been debating for 2 days about people who aren't vaccinated and are at risk, but we have nearly 300,000 cases today. So I think the urgent thing now is to find solutions to protect people.
Eventually, the noise caused by some MPs was so great that the session was suspended until Wednesday afternoon, seriously putting in jeopardy the government's implementation date of January 15th. The main item put forward is the morphing of the country's health passport into a vaccine passport, meaning that for those hoping to enter a leisure site such as a restaurant, a negative test would no longer suffice. Around 90% of French people are fully vaccinated, but the emergence of the highly infectious Omicron variant has seen infections soar to their highest ever levels, with hospitalizations also on the rise.
Well, our French political editor, Mark Perelman, joins me here on set now. Mark, these words of Emmanuel Macron, are they a blunder?
Well, clearly he chose those words. This is not an off-the-cuff sentence. This was an interview, and he used the word piss off because that's, for me, the actual translation, and not only once but twice in this interview. And the sentence is not that I want to piss off those who are not vaccinated. He says the strategy is to piss them off as much as possible because he says this is the way out of the current Omicron plus Delta wave that we're witnessing here in France. But obviously it is a blunder. First of all, because, as we just saw, the debates in the National Assembly for the vaccine pass were suspended for a second night in a row. The first night was because the MPs of his party were not there when there was a vote to suspend the session. And last night, because those words really prompted the opposition to say, this is not a way to talk to the French people. You're insulting them. You say you want to protect them, but you should watch your words because this is an important issue. And the issue is not putting the French one against the other one, but essentially bring them all together under the tent of the vaccination. So yes, it is a blunder, especially 2 weeks after Emmanuel Macron went on national TV for an hour and a half, and he said, looking at the camera, I've learned I am not going to say harsh words or use, off-the-cuff sentences. I'm going to be much more careful in what I say. 2 weeks later, here he comes with those piss-off words.
So those carefully chosen words, as you put it, I mean, do you see them as clearly a sign that he will be a candidate for the French presidential election in the spring? Because he hasn't declared yet, has he?
Well, he came very close in that same interview to declare. When he was asked about, are you going to be a candidate? He says, I want to. However, the timing is not ripe yet. But when you say, I want to be a candidate, this is the clearest indication he has given to date. And one might say the piss-off sentence is part of the strategy because he knows that he has a silent majority, a very overwhelming majority with him. 90% of the French who can get vaccinated have been vaccinated. So he feels they are with him in this fight. And he also wants to embarrass the opposition, because if you look at it, the Conservative Party is in favor of this vaccine pass. The Socialist Party is in favor of this vaccine pass. So the issue is not whether this will be voted in the National Assembly. It will be voted. It's a shoe-in. But he wants basically to say, oh, if you're against what I'm saying, you're with the anti-vax people. You're not with me and with the majority of the French. So this is a way to embarrass them. Obviously, the words he used might backfire, because what might happen is that those anti-vax, which have sometimes come out in the streets, might say, you know, the president clearly shows us as irresponsible. Some are saying he considers us as not responsible citizens and therefore not as citizens. So we're going to come out in the streets and demonstrate. So Emmanuel Macron is a gambler. He's always said he's a gambler, but he believes this is for him a way to maybe shed the presidential costume and show that he is entering the presidential race.
Mark, thanks very much. Mark Perelman, our French political editor there. Now, the UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he hopes to ride out the pandemic without further restrictions. That even as he warns that the country faces difficult days ahead as the highly transmissible Omicron variant drives COVID-19 infections to record levels. Today, Johnson will address a cabinet meeting to formalise the government's position. Opposition politicians and some public health experts still, though, pressing the government to tighten restrictions. Let's hear then from Boris Johnson.
Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus. But the weeks ahead are going to be challenging, both here in the UK and across the world. There is no escaping the fact that some services will be disrupted by staff absences.
Now, the authorities in India's capital, Delhi, have ordered people to stay home over coming weekends, with COVID-19 cases quadrupling there in just a week. The city reporting more than 4,000 cases every single day. A short while ago, I spoke to our correspondent in New Delhi, Edward Hayward, and I asked him why the authorities say the new lockdown there is needed and how people are reacting.
It's definitely the start of a third wave here in Delhi. We had 5,500 new cases reported yesterday, putting the number of active cases at around 15,000. And memories of the devastating second wave are still present in people's minds. So the authorities decided to act quickly. We have already been under a night curfew for the past week from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. As you said, shops have been closing earlier. But now the government of Delhi has ordered a weekend curfew, not a lockdown. They said lockdown in the first place, but they went back and said curfew, starting from 10 p.m. on Friday and ending on Monday at 5 a.m. So what we can clearly see in the street is we have more police controlling people for mask and social distancing. But overall, everyone seems to be listening to the authorities. You know, when we go out at night, streets are empty and people are wearing their masks everywhere. There is a clear sense of responsibility. People don't want to relive the horrors of the second wave, with tens of thousands of people died in New Delhi.
Edward Hayward there. Now, the world's largest technology trade fair, that's the Consumer Electronics Show, opens its doors today in Las Vegas, in person for the first time after a 100% virtual event last year. But because of the Omicron variant, well, big companies like Amazon, Meta and Google will not be at the show. The event will attract then about half of the 170,000 visitors it usually receives. This from our correspondent, Elisa Caverley.
Despite the rapid increase of COVID cases throughout the U.S., 2,200 companies opted to travel to Las Vegas with their new technologies, like this innovative dog collar. It claims to be able to analyze your pet's mood through its heart rate. Price tag, about €350.
Would you be able to tell if she got more stressed?
When the heart rate is fluctuating, it shows that the dog is happy, and the fluctuating is low. It shows that the dog is stressed.
And this South Korean company has developed the first digital tattoo machine.
There you go.
Oh, that's so cool. Easy to do and easy to undo.
The tattoo goes 1 or 2 days until you take a shower.
This innovative bracelet combines fashion and safety When connected to your phone, it can alert your contacts that you are in danger. There are also a lot of different types of vehicles rolling around CES, some more impressive than others. Among the revolutionary technologies, these racing cars that don't actually have anyone driving them. Instead, the cockpit consists of sensors, radars, and cameras developed by students from all over the world. A race will take place on Friday on this racetrack just north of Las Vegas.
Self-driving vehicles can work okay on city streets and urban settings, but there's not been enough development work at high speeds. And eventually, autonomous cars have to be able to go on highways, they have to encounter each other at 70, 80, even 100 miles an hour. And that's what we're developing here.
Big promises both on the ground and in space. This shuttle, the Dream Chaser, could, within 10 years, transport its passengers to a private space station. With technology like this, going high up into space isn't just for officials and NASA programs, but for anyone who can afford it.
Let's have a look at some other world news for you on the programme. And no to military rule, shouted protesters. That as Sudanese forces fired tear gas back at them. The latest from Sudan as anti-coup protesters took to the streets once again there, demanding civilian rule days after the Prime Minister resigned. That as both the US and EU warned the military against naming their own successor. The French National Anti-Terrorism Prosecutor's Office has launched an investigation into a car explosion last week ahead of the Dakar rally in Saudi Arabia that left the French driver Philippe Bouton seriously injured. The office investigating the possibility that it was, to use the official language, an attempted murder in relation to a terrorist enterprise. Saudi authorities have said there is no criminal suspicion. And the US judge has appeared sceptical of a bid by Britain's Prince Andrew to dismiss a lawsuit from Virginia Giuffre accusing him of sexually abusing her when she was 17 and being trafficked by the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. The judge saying he'll rule soon on the dismissal motion. Prince Andrew's lawyers argue that terms contained in a $500,000 settlement between her and Epstein prevent her from pursuing litigation against Andrew. Now, the Kazakh president has accepted the government's resignation after violent protests triggered by a fuel price increase really rocked the oil-rich Central Asian country. Police used tear gas and stun grenades late on Tuesday to drive hundreds of protesters out of the main square in Almaty. That's the former Soviet Republic's biggest city. Clashes went on for hours in nearby areas. In all, 200 people detained by the authorities. Erin Agunke reports.
It's a relatively rare sight in the Central Asian nation of Kazakhstan. Thousands of protesters flood the streets of Almaty, the country's largest city. It was just the latest round of demonstrations over a hike in fuel prices. In a bid to quell the unrest, the Kazakh president accepted his cabinet's resignation, ordering the new government to regulate prices of fuel and other goods deemed socially important. Since last weekend, protesters have braved sub-zero temperatures across the country to demand the price of liquefied gas, which doubled in a matter of days, be decreased. As the protests gradually widened their demands to include the government's resignation, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev imposed a 2-week state of emergency in several cities, vowing to punish rioters.
Дорогие соотечественники, вновь обращаюсь к вам проявить благоразумие и не поддаваться на провокации изнутри и извне, эйфории митинговщины и вседозволенности. Призывы атаковать служебные помещения гражданских и военных ведомств являются абсолютно незаконными. Это преступление, за которым может последовать наказание.
Later Wednesday, the president is nonetheless expected to hold a government meeting to discuss the protesters' remaining demands.
Now, Canada has announced 2 agreements totaling over $31 billion to compensate First Nations children who were taken from their families and put into the child welfare system. Now, the money is also to be used to reform the system that actually remove them and deprive them of the services they need. The agreement there almost, 15 years after the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society first brought forward a human rights complaint. Fraser Jackson reports.
If finalised, it could be the biggest settlement of its kind in Canadian history. 40 billion Canadian dollars towards fixing a discriminatory child welfare system and the First Nation children that it affected, around 28 billion euros.
I'm very pleased to announce that Canada and the parties have reached two significant agreements in principle. One that provides fair and equitable compensation to First Nations children and families harmed by discriminatory underfunding, and the other addressing the long-term reform that's needed for the First Nations Child and Family Services Program.
Almost 15 years ago, First Nation rights groups lodged a complaint against the federal government. Canada's Human Rights Tribunal found that discriminatory underfunding on reserves had led to a disproportionate number of First Nations children being taken from their homes and put into foster care.
The enormity of this settlement is due to one reason and one reason only, and that is the sheer size and scope of the harm that was inflicted on the class members as a result of a cruel and discriminatory First Nations family and child welfare system that Canada has now finally taken major steps to overhaul.
In a 2016 ruling, Ottawa was ordered to pay 40,000 Canadian dollars to each individual affected by the country's discriminatory child welfare system. However, the government is appealing that decision. But on Tuesday, Canada's Justice Minister said Ottawa would drop its appeals once agreements on this new settlement are finalised in the coming months.
Now, workers in the United States are quitting their jobs in unprecedented numbers. New figures show that a record 4.5 million people left their positions in November. Now, it's part of a phenomenon that's really been dubbed the Great Resignation. And our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is here to tell us more about it. Stephen, what do these latest numbers then from the US tell us?
It tells the jobs market is still in turmoil after the pandemic. That 4.5 million figure represents 3% of the American workforce, all quitting their jobs in just 1 month. And those figures have been higher than usual for some time now, as we can see on that graph. You saw a big drop in people leaving their jobs during the first lockdown at the start of 2020, but as soon as the economy opened up, since kind of early last year, we've seen significantly higher than usual numbers of people leaving their jobs. A regular month based on the past sort of 10 years is about 3.5 million people moving. Now we're talking about something that's significantly higher than that. The other side of this is the number of jobs on offer has also increased. At the end of November, there were 10.6 million job openings in the United States. Private sector surveys say that that could have risen as high as 12 million by the end of December. There are just under 7 million people looking for work, so that means there are about 2 workers for every 3 job openings. And overall participation in the labour market in the US, that's those working and those available to work, is still well below pre-pandemic levels.
Obvious second question then, just why?
Well, look, there's a whole host of reasons for it. We know that people have been reassessing their priorities after the pandemic as well. In general, people changing their jobs is seen as a sign of a strong economy. There's jobs on offers, people are able to move to get higher wages or better working conditions. The figures show us that the biggest turnover are in lower paid sectors. Hospitality and leisure seeing record numbers of people quitting. Healthcare as well, seeing the highest quit rate since 2000. A shortage of workers has meant that employers have had to improve their offers for those trying to attract employment, so higher wages, better conditions, as we were talking about. That's driving some change as well. People see that arrivals paying more, so they're going to change job too. Of course, rising inflation plays into this as well. Price rises, consumer price rises in the US at their highest level in over 40 years at the end of last year, almost 7%. Wages are rising on average by about 4%. So people are going to be moving around to try and get more money as well. There are also the issue of people who haven't returned to the workforce since the pandemic struck, people who have childcare issues, people who might have health issues and they're unable to go back to work because they're afraid of catching COVID-19. That's something that's disproportionately affecting women, and we know that female participation in the labour force hasn't recovered in the same way. There's also those who just chose to retire early when the pandemic happened.
And what about the rest of the world? Is this just the US, or does it apply elsewhere too?
Look, we know people in lots of parts of the world have been reassessing their priorities in the wake of everything that's happened in the past 2 years. But the situation is particularly acute in the United States. Part of that is down to the way the labour market works in the US. There's less job security. The social safety net doesn't provide the same sort of level of protection that we see in other parts of the world. In Europe, for example, the unemployment rate is almost back at pre-pandemic levels. So we're in places where there were government furlough schemes that kept people on the payroll during those first lockdowns, that the state was paying wages to people. That meant that they had a link to a job to go back to rather than having lost their jobs and having to look for something new. So that also affects the turnover rate. In France, for example, labour force participation is now actually at a record high after things have been able to open up last year. That's being helped by the government's €100 billion recovery plan as well, which is favouring investment and in turn creating jobs too. There are still labour shortage issues in France. Hospitality is one we've heard a lot about. Some of those issues predate the pandemic as well. And it's true in countries like France that people aren't able to cash in their retirement funds early and retire early in the same way that they might be able to do in the United States. So some people are still interested in changing jobs, but the factors driving it and the extent of it is quite different depending on where you are.
Interesting look at the picture right around the world. Thank you very much, Stephen Carroll, from our business desk there, our business editor. Now then, let's have a look at today's newspapers as well on the programme. Alison Sargent's joining us here on set for that. You're starting here in France with what we started the bulletin with, actually, that rather strong statement from Emmanuel Macron. He wants to piss off the unvaccinated.
He made that incendiary statement in an interview with Le Parisien. The paper calls it a declaration of war on anti-vaxxers. Macron also addressed three other topics in this interview: Europe, economic reforms, and the upcoming election, although he still did not formally announce that he's running. Now, Macron's statement about pissing off the unvaccinated, obviously the one that is getting all of the headlines. The Corriere International has rounded up some reactions from the foreign press. Italian paper Il Tempo asks if Macron has lost his mind, while The Guardian sees this as a political calculation, since the majority of people in France, the paper points out, are fed up with the pandemic and support requiring a vaccine pass. Now, that debate over the vaccine pass has turned into a mainly political battle, according to Le Figaro. Macron's statement only added fuel to the fire in the National Assembly yesterday. Lawmakers suspended their debate at around 2 a.m., and you can expect a lot of tension when they start it up again later today.
And in fact, political tension is a real theme in the papers today. Many have started marking the anniversary of last year's storming of the US Capitol.
The anniversary is tomorrow, January 6th, but many papers, like here in France, Libération, are already marking the occasion. Their headline here: 1 year after the Capitol, democracy is in peril in the United States. Libération writes that January 6th was just a trial run for Trump conservatives. In the years since then, the paper points out, Republicans have been multiplying their anti-democratic tactics, like financing far-right militias and passing a variety of laws that make it easier to control the outcome of the vote in key states. Meanwhile, Ann Telnis of The Washington Post reminds us that while numerous Trump supporters have faced charges for storming the Capitol, those who encouraged them have gone unpunished. She draws them all here in what she calls the insurrectionists' roll call. They include, of course, Donald Trump himself, but also Republican senators like Ted Cruz, who tried to block the vote certification in Congress last year.
And what about early reaction from conservative papers, though?
Well, Stuart, they seem to sort of wish that they could skip this anniversary altogether. The Wall Street Journal writes in their editorial that the main goal of Democrats seems to be to use the memory of January 6th against Republicans. Instead of their, quote, righteous anger, the paper calls on Congress to fix the Electoral Count Act, which is the ambiguous law that made Trump supporters think that Congress had the power to overturn those election results. According to the Wall Street Journal, that law risks causing more problems down the line. Meanwhile, Donald Trump had planned to hold a press conference on January 6th to mark that anniversary. As we read in Politico, though, he has decided to cancel it, much to the relief of Republican senators who were really worried about getting pulled back into that debate over his false election claims.
Let's go back to the topic of vaccines for this next story. The tennis star Novak Djokovic being granted a medical exemption from the Australian Open's vaccine requirements.
This has prompted outrage in Australia. We can take a look at the Courier Mail, their front page here. You must be joking. Joking, of course, written with a D, like Djokovic. All players at the Australian Open must either be fully vaccinated or get a medical exemption to avoid a 14-day quarantine. The paper explains that Djokovic actually hasn't said whether or not he's vaccinated. He's been a bit vague, but he has made it pretty clear that he's against vaccination. It also has not been made public why he was granted this medical exemption, other than the fact, we presume, that he is one of tennis's biggest stars. Djokovic may be exempt from the tournament's vaccine requirements, but he will not be exempt from the fury of Australians. That is according to a writer for Australian paper The Age. He says Novak Djokovic can expect long, loud, and sustained boos of disgust. This writer points out that Novak Djokovic has never been a crowd favorite, and for many papers, his stance on vaccines only solidifies his status as the villain of the tennis world.
Let's try and wash away those bad feelings, shall we? Alison's got two final stories for us, both about looking for love using, what else? Billboards.
Of course, that's how I would look for love.
Exactly.
So just put
Obvious.
up a billboard. Both of these stories are in the Times today. The first is a billboard put up in Times Square in New York, ideal location for a billboard. It was put up by a 30-year-old woman's mother. She asks passersby to please date my daughter. You see the two of them in that image there. There is a sad side to this story, which is that the mother has breast cancer, and she says that she really wants to be reassured that her daughter is going to be in good hands. It has to be said, like, it's sweet. It's a lovely gesture, and her daughter has happily accepted the help from her mom. The next billboard is from a 29-year-old man in the UK who does not want any help from his parents. Mohammed Malik says he put up billboards in Birmingham in order to avoid an arranged marriage. I think maybe the two of them could decide to get together, but one of them would have to be willing to relocate.
I was going to say, it's a lot of flights otherwise and PCR tests. Perhaps they should wait a little while if they are going to. Alison, thanks very much. Alison Sargent with the papers, and Stephen beforehand with the business as well. That's the latest from us here on France 24. Do stay with us. More coming up very shortly.
I mean, honestly, I feel like my rally's over.
I thought it would be fine, and we ended up ripping off a wheel.
Let's talk about sand, baby. Let's talk about SSVs. Let's talk about cars and bikes and prototypes. That's the T3s. Let's talk about sand. Dakar Day 2, the rail rally starts. Dawn, a time for contemplation, anticipation and excitement.
We're ready to start the Dakar. My first objective was just to be here. The second was to be on the starting podium. Every kilometre that we cover is an incredible opportunity. And after that, we just hope for the best.
As the sun rose, the desert of Al Nefud invited this year's field into its dunes for 333 kilometres. The bikers received the roadbook just 20 minutes before the start, so they have to focus. And of course, have a highlighter.
Just trying to mark some important notes in the roadbook. Same for all of us, so just try to manage the best, you know.
Last night's rain made for perfect conditions in the early part of the stage, and the riders were happy to let it rip. But navigation got trickier as the stage wore on, and disaster was set to strike for many riders around kilometre 270. Stranded in the wilderness, a particularly tricky waypoint would end up costing some of the Dakar's big favourites between 30 minutes and an hour.
Yeah, 45, 50 minutes, so it's a bit of a shit way to start the rally, but it's only early days and we'll wait and see what happens.
I mean, honestly, I feel like my rally's over.
It's not over till the fat lady sings, Ricky. And if the rally world had fat ladies, they'd be the trucks. But you know what they say? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. As the navigator and mechanic attempted to cut their driver out of the cabin, the medical helicopter arrived. The added complication here is that the driver, Albert Llovera, is a paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down.
We were driving a bit too fast coming from back there and came over the dune, and we had a half a roll. It's a real shame because we were going pretty well, but we were perhaps going too fast. Just a little bit too fast. These prologue-type stages are always bad because there's so much to lose and very little to gain. For now, I think we're going to try to carry on. We'll see how things are with the truck, see how all of the liquids are. It was only a half roll, and I think we can continue. But before we get to the bivouac, we don't know too much.
Back to the bikes, where a bad day for many riders was turning into a good one for others. Matthias Walkner pushed hard in the closing stages to come third, as his factory teammates Kevin Benavides and Toby Price lost 34 and 44 minutes respectively. It was also a terrible day for Honda, unless you happen to be called Pablo Quintanilla. The Chilean roared to second place and sits second overall. But Juan Barreda, Nacho Cornejo and Ricky Brabeck were all in the group that got lost, and they have between 40 minutes and an hour to make up. There's no doubt who the early star is of this Dakar. 2 days and 2 wins for Daniel Sanders, who roared through the field to come home 2 minutes clear of Quintanilla. Rookie Mason Klein also had a brilliant day. He came fourth, while Adrian van Beveren is also inside the top 5 overall. The big story in the quads on day 2 was that reigning champion Manuel Andujar lost 50 minutes. Lithuanian Laisviedas Kansius, riding his second Dakar after a 7th place last year, took the victory. Kamaz have made a typically dominant start in the trucks. After winning yesterday's short opener, Eduard Nikolaev was second today, just 38 seconds behind defending champion Dmitry Sotnikov. We could be in for a fascinating battle between the two Russian teammates.
You overtake 14 vehicles today. It was absolutely maximum attack. No?
I am happy, with my Toyota, with our Toyota car, really working very well,
It's really surprising to see the effects of this crash, but it has such serious consequences. When I was driving, I thought we'd be fine, and I ended up taking off the wheel. We damaged a rim, and that blocked the wheel and messed up the suspension. It twisted everything. Everything was ripped. We just saw a slight wave with stones. I thought I had enough speed, and in the end it totally ripped off the rear wheel. It's something that we haven't seen at all when we've been testing. We didn't notice that weakness. And of course we're disappointed. We're very disappointed. We're learning, but it's costly each time.
A tough lesson to learn for Mr. Dakar, but no such problems for Martin Prokop in his Ford Raptor. The Czech crew finished the day in P3.
We had 2 punctures at the start, and that meant we couldn't afford another setback. We had to drive defensively until we got to a sandy section. We had good navigation to the finish, no mistakes, and apparently it paid off because, honestly, things didn't start very well.
Matthew, he did a really good job, you know, in navigation, last part, you know, because we see a lot of line gone too much right, you know. And Matthew, he said, no, Nasser, you need to be left, and just me and Sap, we try to push, and after when we get, you know, the waypoint, and we know we are in good way, you know.
Nasser wins the stage from Loeb with the 3 Audis out in the cold. And that means that Nasser is the first ever leader of the World Rally Raid Championship, and he leads the rally. In the lightweight prototype, Seth Quintero made it a Dakar double. Having won yesterday, he made it 2 from 2 at Dakar 22. And it was the Polish driver Aaron Domzala in the T4 side-by-side class who charged through the field from 5th to take the stage win from American rival Austin Jones. Well, today's ups and downs in the dunes are done, but join us again tomorrow if you're up for some more Dakar fun.
What I want for this place in the future is to be protected forever.
My name is Antoine. I'm a director and photographer with a big interest in wildlife and marine life. And this adventure was definitely one of the best experiences I lived with animals. With my friends Erika and Rafael, we spent 10 days in the Galapagos Islands, close to the coast of Ecuador in the Pacific Ocean. We wanted to show the beauty and uniqueness of this place, but also how fragile this paradise is, and how important it is to preserve Galapagos. On our journey, we met scientists who fight every day for the preservation of marine life.
In here you have 90% of all the animals around the world in just one single place.
You can go to any place in the islands and you can for sure swim with sea turtles, guarantee. That means that the Galapagos is still in good shape in terms of environment.
We started to understand the problems Galapagos are facing. Even if the islands look healthy and pristine, the Galapagos ecosystem is in danger.
We were in one of the most pristine areas in the islands. We were in Marchena and Pinta. No tourism, nobody goes, no fishermen, nobody. The only people around were us, and because we have a special permit as a scientist to go there. And you saw it. You saw how full of trash, how full of plastic mainly was some of those islands. And you are like, how come? I mean, how come? It's apocalyptic. Actually, the Galapagos was the first place in South America that banned single-use plastics. Where is this garbage coming from?
It's really hard to see all this plastic on the beach. The plastic doesn't come from here. Even if they try hard, the people of Galapagos don't have control over their own environment.
Because that means that that blue we can see today here is full of plastic. Galapagos is a witness of how bad is the entire planet, because if this pollution arrived to the Galapagos, it means that the entire planet is affected now.
What are you doing here?
The idea is to measure how much macroplastic we found in 50 meters in this specific point.
But when you come to somewhere where nobody ever comes, and you see all the trash and all the waste from the whole world moving around because of the wind or the currents. It's just sad. It's just sad because at the end of the day, this is like the worst people or the worst species that are going to suffer are animals and humans at some point.
These people showed us what microplastic is and how uncontrollable it is.
You took a plastic cup that has been there, you touch it, in the moment that you touch it, it was microplastic. That is the future for all the plastic that we see, that we use, that we cannot recycle. That's the future of microplastic. Right now microplastic is in the air, in the water, in the animals, it's everywhere. Now the next question is, what is going to happen for the future? That is going to affect our health.
During our trip, we also jumped on a mission to these 2 remote and completely pristine islands in the north.
We're trying to look for the area where we can catch the sea turtles.
It's an easy job, but you need to have patience. So it's a nice day, so I have patience.
The goal was to catch sea turtles, which is actually not that easy. First, we needed to bring the turtles on board to collect important scientific data. For example, the scientists needed to understand the feeding patterns of the young turtles. And then, by extrapolation, the scientists can access how many turtles ingest pieces of plastic, or how many die in abandoned fishing nets. In order to fight ocean plastic, we need to know how big the problem already is.
Our research was the base ground in order to ban single-use plastics in Galapagos.
To expand the research on the turtles, we filmed their movements and feeding habits with a camera we put it on their shell. And after a few hours, we were able to take back the camera and all the information needed. Suddenly we encountered this young sea lion who was entangled in a fishing net on the beach. This happens a lot because many industrial fishing stuff are left abandoned and become dangerous traps for marine life. But luckily we were able to free these young sea lions. The days spent in the Galapagos Islands were a dream come true for us. We saw and lived much more than we could have imagined. After what we've seen, we can say that there is no other place like this on Earth. It's completely unique. But Galapagos also reminds us how fragile and endangered this paradise is.
The animals that come and breed here, that develop, and without it, then we will lose the nurture place for all the species in the world. And if we don't preserve it, it's going to be destroyed. And what will the future generations will have?
It's sad, but I think it's still hope. The best that you can do is try it. If you see an item in the supermarket that is wrapped in plastic and you can choose an item that is not wrapped in plastic, do it. No matter if you are the perfect vegan, plastic-free person, because that is impossible. But at least you try it. Imagine 7 billion people trying, it's gonna make the difference.
Right.
Summer days, the Dakar's begun, but summer nights and the rainfall has come. Tell me more, tell me more. Will they go very far? On their bikes, on their quads, in a truck or a car? Well, yes, actually. 338 kilometers for stage 3 from Hail to Al Kasuma.
I mean, I would expect nothing less than the Dakar. We didn't come here for it to be easy, so the focus is going to be much more on the navigation, and keep in mind that we still have 2 weeks of this.
Daniel Sanders with the formidable task of opening in the bikes after 2 stage wins in a row. The Aussie ripped through the first part of the stage, but he was soon caught by Pablo Quintanilla, and after the refueling, they strayed off course. A few fans were there to enjoy the action up close, but no time to stop and sign autographs.
Me and Pablo were searching for a waypoint here, and then I see Walkner and a few other riders coming, and yeah, we were one valley too far to the left, and then we had to jump across one, fix the mistake. I pushed a lot and tried to make up as much time as I could in this last dune section, so it was really good. I think I recovered.
Sanders was very much limiting the damage. He's only 3 minutes 29 off the pace overall. But while Sanders may have been flying, Spanish father and daughter team Manuel and Monica Plaza definitely were not.
We damaged our suspension. I tried to change it, and in doing so I hurt my finger and cut the skin around it. We're going to see if we can repair it now when the truck arrives. The doctor told me I could continue, and we would like to try to continue.
Vale, y esto es para...
Me vas a dar un martillazo.
Que no te doy un martillazo. Coge desde allí.
Vale, no te muevas hasta que yo te diga, por favor.
No, escucha, de ahí no cojas. Coge de aquí y de aquí.
¿De
Vale,
aquí?
tírale para arriba.
Sandy, so sandy. She sits and wonders why this race has to be so sandy.
Tira para allá, tira para
Go
allá.
over there, over there. That's Richard.
El camión, no.
That's the assistance truck. I'm not sure they saw us. That's the truck we need. See if you can get over there in a car. Ask those guys if they can help you.
Que te lleven con un coche por aquí. Porque el problema
The problem is that the spare parts are in the truck. That's the assistance truck and they didn't see us.
On the Dakar, the tension and the emotion can be almost overwhelming. Back to the bikes, where Kevin Benavides is back in contention. After what he described as yesterday's disaster with navigation, the defending champion took an excellent third place after enjoying a spin with Aaron Marin. He's now 20 minutes back. We also now have a new overall leader in Sam Sunderland. The only British winner of the Dakar came second after navigating through the final dunes with Matthias Waltner and Adrian van Beveren. The trio went together like shamalama lama lama ding dong.
Then in the last part we all just took turns really in opening, but a lot of difficult navigation, change of direction, difficult day.
But it's Juan Barreda who stormed to the stage victory by over 5 minutes. Like Benavides, he's right back in the mix overall. It's his 28th Dakar stage win, leaving him 5 short of the all-time record. Things are really tightening up in the bikes today, and the fun is only just beginning. In the quads, the thrills, they're multiplying, and the power that Manuel Andújar was supplying was electrifying as he shaped up to take stage 2, but he's still 34 minutes behind Cancius overall.
Monica's
in the car that you can see over there in the distance to see if she can intercept the truck. The good thing is that even the truck can't get up there, so I think we may be able to get our spare parts. Yes, she caught up to them.
No, vienen.
They're coming now. I don't know what they're saying.
And finally, it's a beautiful ending to a story of uncertainty and anxiety as the Platha family adventure continues.
It's very much a problem we didn't foresee. It's neither a problem with the electric motor nor with the new generation of car, nothing to do with it. It's really a problem with the suspension arm, which we didn't expect. We finally repaired it. When we got to the neutral zone already too late, they didn't let us go, which means we're out of the race.
After a long night on the tools for the Audi crew, we go again for stage 2, the cars starting after the bikes.
It's not easy, you know, because the line of the bikes was a little bit difficult for us.
And as I was pushing very hard, we had to push like in WRC for 340 kilometers. It was exciting. At the end, I catch him, so I was able to follow him in the dunes.
We hit the stone last 10K. We was front of Saab, but after we need to let Saab go, you know.
And completely at the end of the stage, it was a lot of stone, so I tried to pass in front to avoid the puncture.
I think it will be one of us, you know, until the end, you know, fighting, but it's still a long way. I think some big surprise is coming also. This is the feeling, you know.
Like a charging bull in his freshly charged Audi RSQ e-tron, El Matador Carlos Sainz was on a mission to make up for lost time. Third quickest on the stage. Last year's silver medalist in the FIA Cross Country Rallies World Cup, Argentine Lucio Alvarez is currently rodeoing his Toyota Hilux in bronze, third position overall. Loeb's 15th Dakar stage win is a historic first for ProDrive. Alatia's overall lead has had a chunk taken out of it by the French legend, while the two of them share the top spot in the W2RC standings. In the T3 lightweight prototype class, rookie Guillaume de Mevius conquered his first ever Dakar special exactly 20 years after his father Grégoire won his stages in Africa. In the new overall, Chaleco Lopez leads the way ahead of Sebastian Eriksson and Pavel Lebedev. Austin Jones battled side by side with teammate and rival Aaron Domzala on stage 2, and the American came out on top. AJ moves up to take the lead in the T4 class. The truck class is hopelessly devoted to Kamaz Master again. Another 1, 2, 3, 4 in fact. Andrei Karginov was quickest by just 38 seconds from teammate Dmitry Sotnikov. Kamaz have locked out the top 4 overall. Alesh Loprais is the best of the rest. Some Dakar cars are automatic, some were problematic. The trucks were just right at it, the bikes are acrobatic, but one thing's for sure, they all go, go, go like greased lightning.
My name is Catherine Crow, and I'm a systems engineer right here at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And this is rocket science in 60 seconds. NASA's Space Launch System, also known as the SLS, is a powerful rocket that can carry the Orion spacecraft as well as crew and large payloads to the moon. The SLS rocket is powered by twin 5-segment solid rocket boosters in a core stage with 4 RS-25 engines. 2 massive tanks hold hundreds of thousands of gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to provide propellant to the 4 engines. SLS is the only rocket that can move us forward to explore the moon, establish a permanent base there, and develop the technologies to take American astronauts to Mars and beyond.
Hey guys, and welcome back to NASA at Home, where we bring NASA home to you. Today, we're gonna take a look at what it takes to send spacecraft like rovers and landers to Mars, and check out our newest Mars 2020 rover named Perseverance. But first, let's find out how much you know about Mars. Come on. So, there are 8 planets in our solar system. How many planets away from the sun is Mars? Is it A, the first planet from the sun, B, the 6th planet from the sun, or C, the 4th planet from the sun? If you said C, the 4th planet from the sun, you'd be correct. Mars is located between Earth and Jupiter. Now, Earth has 1 moon, but some planets have no moons at all, and others have dozens of moons. How many moons do you think Mars has? 1, 2, 14, 79? If you guessed 2 moons, you're right. The 2 Martian moons are Phobos and Deimos. Now, do you think Mars is bigger or smaller than the Earth? And what about our moon? Is Mars bigger or smaller than the moon? Mars is about half the diameter of the Earth, but it's about twice the diameter of the moon. Mars has about 1/10 the mass of Earth. And because it has less mass, that means that it has less gravity, about 62.5% less than you're used to here on Earth. In fact, if you weighed 100 pounds on Earth, you'd weigh only 38 pounds on Mars. That's sure one way to lose weight. Too bad your mass doesn't change, though. Alert, alert, alert. Now, we know Earth is the 3rd planet from the sun, and it's about 93 million miles away from it. But of course, Mars is the 4th planet from the sun, so naturally, it's further away. Mars is about 142 million miles from the sun. Being further from the sun means its orbit is a longer path, so a year, or the time it takes to make one trip around the sun, is almost twice as long on Mars as a year on Earth. Now, people are always talking about living on Mars, but what would it actually be like? How easy would it be to survive? The atmosphere on Mars is mostly carbon dioxide and extremely thin, without enough oxygen for us to breathe. There's no liquid water on the surface to drink either. The landscape is freezing with no protection from the sun's radiation or from passing dust storms. The keys to survival will be technology, research, and testing. Like Earth, Mars has volcanoes, gullies, and flat plains. Scientists can also see channels that look like they were carved by rivers and streams a long, long time ago. These are areas we want to explore for signs that life once may have survived there. So, how do you get to Mars?
How do you get to Mars? If you want to send a spacecraft all the way to Mars, first you'll need a fast rocket to escape the pull of Earth's gravity. The heavier your spacecraft, the more powerful your rocket needs to be to lift off. Next, make sure you launch at the right time. Mars and Earth orbit the Sun at different speeds and distances. Sometimes they're really far apart, and other times they come closer together. About every 2 years, the 2 planets are in perfect positions to get to Mars with the least amount of rocket fuel. That's important. The total trip is over 300 million miles. Finally, make sure your aim is right. You can't shoot for where Mars is at launch time. You have to aim for where it will be when you get there. It's a lot like how a quarterback passes a football. Also, you may need a few thrusts to correct your direction along the way so you don't miss Mars. If all goes well, you'll get to the red planet in about 7 or 8 months. Then, if you actually want to land on Mars, well, that's a whole other challenge.
What do we send to Mars? Since the 1960s, scientists have been sending spacecraft to Mars. Several different types of spacecraft have been sent to the red planet over the years, and they all have different specialities. The first missions to Mars were flyby missions that took photos and measurements as they passed by the planet. Next, we send orbiters, which orbit Mars, taking pictures as they zoom around the planet. Other robots we send include landers, which provide photos and scientific information from their landing spots on the surface of Mars. InSight is the lander currently on Mars, sending back data and giving us insight into what the inside of Mars is like. And the last type of spacecraft we send are rovers. Rovers have wheels and specialize in moving around. They land on the surface of Mars and drive around to different locations and help scientists in their quest to understand how the planet formed and evolved into its current state. Over the years, we've sent 4 rovers to learn more about Mars: Sojourner, Spirit and Opportunity, and Curiosity. The Perseverance rover, as part of the Mars 2020 mission, will launch to the Red Planet as early as July 30th, 2020. So, why are all the people working on Perseverance wearing clean suits and masks? Well, let's meet one of the scientists who can explain to us why it's so important to keep things clean when we're building any type of spacecraft to send to another planet or celestial body.
It's really important that we send a rover that's clean and we make sure that it doesn't contaminate Mars. My name is Mujige Stricker and I protect Mars from Earth bacteria. The next Mars rover is slated to go to Mars, collect samples so that eventually we can bring those samples back to Earth and determine for the very first time, did life exist on Mars? There's nothing that we can build that's sterile. So we take swabs and wipes of the spacecraft as it's being built. It gets put in an oven, it gets put in various chambers and clean rooms so that we can maintain that level of cleanliness. If we do find something on Mars, we have to make sure it's something that actually came from Mars and not something that hitched a ride. This is the place where the magic happens. Oh, it's definitely cool. In this lab, we look specifically at spores. So spores are those hardy microorganisms that can actually survive if it made it on the spacecraft in the journey through space, through the vacuum. It's very humbling to be a part of this big project because there are hundreds of people that have to come together and build a spacecraft. There's no one person that can say, I did this, I made this happen. It's always a we. I owe it all to Carl Sagan and watching the cosmos. I remember being a little kid, going to the public library and renting that VHS. And from that moment, the light bulb turned on. It actually was the start of my passion of science communication. We are citizens of our universe. We have to be good ambassadors when we are exploring other planets, other moons. So it's the right thing to do.
But how exactly do you land on Mars?
How do you land on Mars? Very carefully. Your spacecraft hurtles toward the planet at thousands of miles per hour, so you'll have to hit the brakes in a hurry. First, your capsule needs a heat shield. It protects the spacecraft inside from the heat and friction of entry into the atmosphere. Friction slows you down over 90%, but not enough to land safely. Use a parachute to slow down even more. Still, falling at over 100 miles per hour, you need the right system to land safely. Here are some options. With a small to mid-size rover, use a cushion of airbags along with retro rockets. Impact at 30 miles an hour and bounce to a stop. With a large lander, use retro rockets and landing legs to touch down going about 6 miles an hour. Or with a large heavy rover, use a big jetpack to slow down to under 2 miles an hour. Then gently lower it on cables to land on its wheels. Any way you do it, you'll need skill and hard work. There's nothing easy about landing on Mars.
You can practice landing your own spacecraft on target like an engineer using things you can find around the house. Here's my friend Oda to tell us more about it.
Hi, this is Oda from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Today we're going to learn a little bit about how NASA lands spacecraft on planets and moons. And then we're going to try our hands at it ourselves with objects we have lying around the house. Landing on another planet that is constantly in motion, rotating on its axis and revolving around the sun can be tricky. Spacecraft like NASA's Perseverance Mars rover travel really fast through space toward a target landing spot on the surface of a planet, in this case, Mars. Because the rover will be landing by itself with no real-time help from people on Earth, scientists and engineers must do a lot of work in advance, understanding the forces and motion involved, and then programming the computer to make sure the rover lands at the right spot. NASA's Artemis program will launch astronauts from Earth to a moon-orbiting gateway station. From this gateway, astronauts will fly on a lunar lander to land on and explore the moon. As you can see, it's necessary to understand the motion of all the objects involved: the spacecraft, the lander, and the planet. Now, let's set up a challenge for you to try this at home. You'll need a few materials. About 9 feet of string, or anything string-like, so fishing line or dental floss will also do. A disposable cup, a paper clip, some tape, scissors, and a marble or other object that will serve as your lander. You'll also need a target of some sort. Print out our template or make a target of your own. Set up a zip line by tying the ends of the string to 2 chairs, or use a door handle in a chair. One end of the string should be higher than the other. The more slanted your zip line, the faster your spacecraft will travel. Place the target on the floor under the zip line, about 2 feet from the low end. Use the paper clip to hang your spacecraft cup from the zip line. Make sure the cup and paper clip can slide freely from the top of the zip line to the bottom. Now it's time to design and build your spacecraft. Figure out how to modify the paper cup to carry the marble down the zip line to land on the target, using the materials you have on hand. Will the marble travel inside the cup? Outside of the cup on a platform? Underneath it? How will your spacecraft release the marble lander while zipping down the line? Consider whether you will use an automatic release system or a remotely activated release system. If you'd like, you can use additional string tied to your cup to create a remotely activated release system. Now, test your design. Release your cup at the top of the zip line and try to land your marble on the target while your spacecraft is moving. Use the numbered rings on your target to keep track of your accuracy. Repeat your runs several times to get consistent results. Now, think of how you might improve your design. Make a modification and try the experiment again. Keep making modifications and testing your design after each one to see how accurate you can get. Can you consistently get a bullseye? Getting close to the center of the target is what NASA engineers must do when they land a spacecraft on another planet or on the moon. Keep in mind, this is a really tough challenge. Don't get discouraged. Instead, persevere, and even get your family members involved in suggesting ideas.
To check out this activity online, go to the Mars 2020 STEM Toolkit. So now you know how to land your spacecraft, but how do we choose where to land on Mars?
How do you choose a landing site? So you want to study Mars with a lander or rover, but where exactly do you send it? It's a tricky question for engineers and scientists. You want it all, to land, work, and discover. To land safely means no high elevation sites where there isn't enough atmosphere to slow you down in time. And try to avoid places with steep slopes or big rocks that could damage something. You also don't want to sink into a thick layer of dust. Working is easier near the equator, where seasons aren't so extreme and where solar panels can get lots of sun. And of course, don't send a rover somewhere it can't drive. Most important is what you want to discover. Some sites are great for studying rock layers, others might be perfect to listen for quakes. Using Mars orbiters, you can collect lots of data on potential sites. When you find the best spot to land, work, and discover, you've found your new home on Mars.
Perseverance will land in a region of Mars called Jezero Crater. This crater is interesting to scientists because it may have once been the site of an ancient river delta. The rocks in this region could tell us about the history of the red planet. Scientists believe it might be possible that life existed a long time ago on Mars. But if that were the case, they'd probably be teeny tiny little organisms. Something like bacteria here on Earth. But did life ever really get started on Mars? The Mars 2020 mission hopes to answer that question. The mission will send a rover very similar to Curiosity to explore the rocks, dirt, and air on Mars. Like Curiosity, the Perseverance rover is the size of a small SUV. The new rover has different goals and different science instruments. It will look directly for signs of past life on Mars. We'll even collect samples that can one day be returned to Earth for us to study. The The Martian atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, which humans cannot breathe. Perseverance will test a method for separating oxygen from the carbon dioxide in the Martian atmosphere. This will help NASA develop the best designs for devices that will provide oxygen for breathing and even for launching rockets to return from Mars one day. Let's meet one of our engineers that builds the rovers that go to Mars.
I'm Aaron Yazzie. I grew up in Holbrook, Arizona, a small town near the Navajo Nation. As a kid, I played outside in the Rocky Desert using my imagination to invent and build things. I graduated from Stanford University with a degree in mechanical engineering. I now work at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where I help design and build Mars rovers and landers that play in the desert, just like I used to. For all you students out there with a big imagination, you're already on your way to becoming a great engineer.
Now, once you land the rover on Mars, how does the rover drive? How do you drive a rover on another planet from Earth?
How do rovers drive on Mars? First of all, there's no joystick for driving a Mars rover. Before a rover hits the road, engineers send computer commands overnight, telling it where to go the next day. Depending on how tricky the terrain is, rover drivers have two options. They can send a string of specific commands like drive forward 5 meters, then turn right 90 degrees. The rover turns its wheels enough times to add up to 5 meters, and then turns in place. Or if it looks safe, they can let the rover think on its own. They write commands like, see that rock over there? Find your way there safely. Then, using two cameras like human eyes, the rover gets a 3D view of hazards such as large rocks and steep slopes. After mapping the danger zones, it plots the safest route to avoid them. Either way, did the rover complete its drive as planned? Engineers double-check when the rover sends back a postcard of its new spot on Mars.
Did you know NASA's Send Your Name to Mars campaign invited people from around the world to submit their names to ride aboard NASA's next rover to the Red Planet? And in fact, some 10,932,295 people did just that. These names were then stenciled by electron beam onto 3 fingernail-sized silicon chips, along with the essays of the 155 finalists in NASA's Name the Rover contest. On March 16th, the chips were then attached to an aluminum plate on NASA's Perseverance Mars rover at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Scheduled to launch summer of 2020, Perseverance will land at Jezero Crater on February 18th, 2021.
Curiosity, insight, spirit, opportunity. If you think about it, all of these names of past Mars rovers are qualities we possess as humans. We are always curious and seek opportunity. We have the spirit and insight to explore the Moon, Mars, and beyond. But if rovers are to be the qualities of us as a race, we miss the most important thing: perseverance. We as humans evolved as creatures who could learn to adapt to any situation, no matter how harsh. We are a species of explorers, and we will meet many setbacks on the way to Mars. However, we can persevere. We, not as a nation, but as humans, will not give up. The human race will always persevere into the future. My name is Alexander Mather, and that's why I chose Perseverance as the name of NASA's next Mars rover. I don't really think that there is a word in any human language that can describe the feeling of having your name selected to be part of a mission from the greatest agency in the world, doing the most important things to help humanity spread to the stars. I am 13 years old, and I did not expect that I would be making any form of impact on human space exploration like this until I was at least out of college, or maybe in an internship. And here I am, and I just named a rover. Something I submitted was chosen by people who one day I plan to work with, and that's incredible.
Perseverance won't be the only one heading to Mars. It's taking along a small hitchhiker. Ingenuity, the first helicopter to be sent to the Red Planet. Check it out.
Can we fly at Mars? That has been a question for a long time. This is a huge milestone for us. But really our job isn't done until we see the same test flight being performed at Mars.
Ingenuity has to be super lightweight in order to fly on Mars. It also needs large blades that can rotate really fast to generate enough lift to overcome gravity in the thin Martian atmosphere. Here's a simple activity you can do at home to build your own helicopter. Okay, to do this next activity, you only need a couple of supplies. You need one sheet of paper, a pair of scissors, and something to write with. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of paper and we're going to make it the correct size. So we're going to fold it in half, top to bottom, and then you're going to want to crease that really nicely so that we can either tear or cut along that crease. So you're going to split it into 2 sheets of paper. So you'll have 2 half sheets, just like this. And then you only need 1 of them. So go ahead and put one to the side. And then you're gonna go ahead and fold your half sheet in half. And do this just like you did before. You get a nice thin rectangle. And you want a nice crease so that you can once again split this into 2 pieces of paper. Now you only need 1 of those. So once you have one, the next step is to fold this in half one more time, but this time we're not going to be cutting or tearing anything. Instead, we're going to draw a line right down the middle, just like so. Okay, so then we're going to rotate it and we're going to look at the bottom section and we're going to split it into thirds. So you're going to have to kind of guess about where it splits into thirds, but you're going to mark it off. And then we're going to draw a line all the way to the bottom of the paper. Just like that. Great. Okay. Now once we have these 3 lines, we're going to focus on the top half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find about the center of the paper. So let's see. Here's about the center. And I'm going to draw a line to either side. Now I want to leave a gap between these 2 lines. As I draw this, it kind of looks like the top of a house or the top of a triangle. And then from the point of that, you're going to draw a line straight up. Perfect. Okay. And if your lines aren't perfect, that is okay. But if you choose to, you can use a ruler to draw them. All right, now the last step before we begin cutting or folding anything, we need to mark where we're going to cut because we don't want to cut the wrong things. So I'm going to actually take my pen and draw a little circle right on either side. So that means I'm going to cut this little section right here and this little section right here. Just that line, that's it. And then I also want to cut this top section. Okay, so once I've marked those, I'm going to grab my scissors and cut carefully so that I don't cut the wrong thing. So just this little section, and then we'll cut this little section. And then our top portion, just down to that point. Perfect. Now that's all we're going to cut, nice and easy. And then we're going to begin folding. So let's start with the bottom. We're going to use those lines we drew as our fold lines. So we're folding in, so you can see now why we split it into thirds. Oh, not too bad. All right, and then I'm going to fold the other side in, just like so. So this is the bottom of our helicopter. And then I'm going to fold the very end up just a little bit to give it some weight, like so. Just like that. Not perfect, but that's okay. Now we look at the top. We need to fold our blades of our helicopter down. So we're gonna fold along those lines we drew. So I'm gonna fold one of them forward. Then I'm going to flip my helicopter over. And I'm gonna fold the other one backwards. Now if you get confused at all, you can always check once you're done folding them. Make sure you've got one blade going one direction, one going the other direction. Just like that. Perfect. Now we're gonna reach up really high and let it fall. So it gets a nice spin on it. So what you can do is you can take your helicopter, if you haven't dropped it on the ground, and you can try it out. Reach up really high, stand somewhere where you're not gonna hit anyone, and see how it flies. Now, maybe you'd like to change it, or maybe you'd like to see how it compares to other things that you might drop. So try dropping it at the same time as dropping a plain piece of paper. And then ball that paper up into a ball and drop it at the same time as your helicopter. And then you can make all sorts of new designs and get new ideas just like a NASA engineer would. Good luck with your helicopter and have fun!
To get more details about this activity and other Mars resources, check out our Mars 2020 STEM Toolkit online.
Wow, perseverance and ingenuity are true examples of pioneering science at its best. Don't forget to check out our Perseverance rover launch in July of 2020. And thanks for joining me today. For NASA at Home, I'm Lindsay Thornton. See you next time.
January 5th, 2000. The U.S. government decides 6-year-old Elian Gonzalez should be returned to his father in Cuba. That move touches off angry protests by Cuban Americans in Miami, home of Elian's U.S. relatives. After a legal battle, the government seizes Elian from those relatives months later, and the boy returns to Cuba. 1925, Nellie T. Ross succeeds her late husband as governor of Wyoming, becoming the first female governor in American history. 1998.
I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Sonny Bono, pop star turned politician, is killed after striking a tree while skiing in South Lake Tahoe, California. He was 62. 2004, after 14 years of denials, Pete Rose publicly admits he bet on baseball while he was manager of the Cincinnati Reds. And 1973.
Oh, barroom, I shine vacancy. To see her, you gotta look hard.
Make way for the boss. Bruce Springsteen releases his debut album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Today in History, January 5th. Sophia Manos, The Associated Press.
On a dark desert highway, a cruel wind in the air, a barren land to mistreat us, a rising sense of despair.
It's really cold there, but this whole rally has been cold, and with the rain obviously it makes it even colder. So it's the same for everybody, but it is pretty chilly in the mornings.
It's another nice stage, looks be again a little bit wet. Yeah, it's just day 3, but I feel good, I feel health, so let's start the day full gas.
Joan Barredo was the first off the line today, and he lost around 10 minutes after struggling to find a waypoint in the dunes. But for the most part, this one was fast and furious. World champion Matthias Walkner cruising through as he remained 3rd overall. Sam Sunderland got lost with Barreda, but he held on to the lead by the skin of his teeth.
I didn't really want to push too much today because I think tomorrow's going to be super long, so it would be good to start a bit back, you know.
Another sensational effort from rookie Mason Klein to come 3rd on the stage. And just ahead of him was 2-time champion Toby Price, while Joaquim Rodriguez took his first ever Dakar stage win and dedicating it to his late brother-in-law, Paulo Gonçalves.
Paulo, he was my mentor. He teach me about rally. He was my family, and of course this goes for him and also for my sister, my nephews, and of course my family also back home in Portugal. Beijinhos.
It was also a historic day for the Rodriguez team, Hero Motorsports, as they celebrated their first win on the world's toughest rally. Much smaller gaps today, with under 5 minutes separating the top 10. Sunderland leads by just 4 seconds from his brother-in-law, Adrian van Beveren, ahead of the longest stage of the rally. And the Frenchman might have been on top if he hadn't turned 30 today.
It's their fault that I lost those 4 seconds. I did a wheelie to celebrate my birthday and I held it on the back wheel for about 20 seconds. So the 4 seconds were definitely in there.
What a shame.
C'est dommage. Mais bon.
Another family story for you now. Aldo and Andrea Winkler, father and son.
My dad did 8 of the cars, but the last one was a long time ago in '97. Now I'm very worried because of my dad, and we were lost. But now I arrived and he's not here.
To be continued. For most competitors, the Dakar is the biggest challenge of their lives. Quads, cars, trucks, bikes, everyone suffers. Every day and on every stage, someone hears the mission bell. Dakar can be heaven, or it can be hell.
We only have 3rd gear, so it's no way to get up. We cannot do anything.
And if it wasn't tough enough, sometimes bad luck knocks you back. Or a truck. Or the sand. Or another bike. Or your own bike. Or a rock. Or a different rock. Or a bush, or your car, or just that it's so damn hard, or more sand, or another rock. You get the picture. But what makes these men and women, these mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, so remarkable, so heroic, is that they get back in the saddle and give everything to complete one of the most extraordinary feats of human endeavor known to man. Talking of fathers and sons, Aldo Winkler made it back to his boy. And they live to ride another day together. Time for the quad squad now. Stage 2 winner Manuel Andujar led them out through the wet sand, but he didn't stay in front for long. Alexandre Giroux is slowly clawing back the 20 minutes he lost on Sunday and passed the reigning champion. But no one could keep pace with Pablo Copetti on his Yamaha. Last year's third-place rider quickly pulled 2 minutes ahead, and he kept that lead all the way to the finish. Copetti's 6th Dakar Special victory means he takes over as race leader from Lais Viadas Cancius, who was penalised nearly 17 hours today after he couldn't complete the stage. Audi have gone back to the future, and the fight for victory takes a twist. For Sébastien Loeb, a harsh come-down after the highs of yesterday's stage win.
The transmission broke after around 10 kilometers, so we had to do the whole stage in two-wheel drive. It was a tough one. I deserved the medal today, not yesterday, because, well, it was a real pain, even if we made it through to the end. There isn't much standing in Nasser's way now. It's going to be harder to put him under pressure like we were trying to.
I think Sab, he have a problem with the car, you know, and just we try to take it easy, you know, without any risk, you know. I'm quite happy to finish the stage.
Nasser cruised to the finish line, knowing he now has a very comfortable lead. MotoGP star Carlos Checa has transitioned from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, to roof, on his Dakar debut. The end result may be academic now, but for Audi the mission is scientific, and Stefan Peter Hansel is now on a full-speed competitive test in the RSQ e-tron. Putting the high in Hilux, Henk Lattegen continues to impress with a second fastest time for Toyota on stage 3. But electrifying the desert was Carlos Sainz, giving Audi its first Dakar stage win since 1985 and silencing the doubters. The electric-powered RSQ e-tron is fast and it lasts.
It's terrible that we lost so much time on the second day, but for us this Dakar is about learning and getting information. It's only the first rally with this car. We still have a lot to learn.
3 Audis in the top 5, but no Loeb in the top 10. And that means that Nasser Al-Attiyah can now control this Dakar from the front. Late last night, Seth Quintero eventually made it to the Al Kasuma bivouac, exhausted.
Had a great day all the way up until about 45, 50 Ks to go. Had a great lead and then lost front diff, and when we lost front diff, tried to keep driving, and then we either lost the rear diff or we lost transmission, and that ended our day, and looks like that ended our Dakar rally. But yeah, pretty frustrating. I hope physically I can make it tomorrow, to be honest, because it's not a good time.
Just a few hours later, young Seth was storming again, flying to his 3rd stage success at Dakar 2022. In the overall standings, Cheleco Lopez has a slim 9-minute lead over Ericsson. Apart from driving an SSV, Marek Goksal owns a theme park. Today the theme was winning, the desert his roller coaster, and he wore a racing suit instead of a cartoon dog outfit. Austin Jones leads the overall by 5:23. In the Kamaz Masters Chambers, they're gathering for the feast, flying like eagles as Dmitry Sotnikov in that glorious Blue Beast leads by almost 12 minutes. If you hear voices calling from far away, it's Dakar 2022. We've got a welcome, a hot spell and a camel for you. Saudi's a lovely place, such a lovely place when the Dakar's here. See you tomorrow.
Awesome. That's what I saw when I woke up. Love, check. Wait. Oh, yeah. Yeah, go, baby.
It's running too quickly, they can't. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another video. So it is our last day here in Victoria Bay and the waves aren't really that great, so we decided we're gonna head off straight to JBay now. Super excited. We're gonna meet my uncle for lunch in Clayton Bay. We're gonna quickly eat lunch there and then we're gonna be at JBay at around 1:30, and then I can quickly surf till like 3:30. So hopefully we get some footage there, and then I have class from 4 o'clock, and then I think I won't be able to surf after that because it's gonna continue for too long. But yeah, we're gonna head off to JBay now. I'll see you guys on the road. This is the house we lived in. If you guys want to stay here as well, that's how it looks. That's the view. That was risky, eh? Imagine you go down here, Dad. Ew. Okay guys, so we just arrived here at the restaurant. It is absolutely stunning. Let me show you guys around quickly. So we're gonna sit over there, I think. Some cool tables. Check out this view. It's incredible. It's like super quiet and like isolated from everything. So we're gonna have a quick brunch and I'll see you after. Just finished with our lunch brekkie. We have about 2 more hours. We have about 2 more hours to drive until JBay. Then we'll probably only have like an hour and a half to surf before I have to get out for class, which absolutely sucks. But yeah, we gotta do what we gotta do. What you gotta do? Okay guys, so we live in a penthouse. It is literally the coolest thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. Like, I'm gonna show you guys it now, okay? So you walk all the way up here. We start up over here. We come up the stairs. Guys, we're living straight in front of Super Tubes. Look at this view. Come out here. Mommy taking videos over there. Coming out here. Waves over there breaking all the way over here. We can't wait for a set now, but anyways, this is the view. A little table here, literally overlooking everything. It is so freaking sick. Surfboard over there. Now if you look at this, guys, my parents' bedroom over here. Look at their view. Look at this view. Oh my word, there's a wave going. Ew! Look at that one. Ew! Come up over here, there's a super cool couch to chill out and check. Like a couch, we're gonna play some board games. There's another little strip you can look out. There's the point over there, people surfing as well. Like an afternoon nap couch. Walk over here, this is the kitchen. Super cool, funky looking kitchen, the dinner table. There's a little couch, you can look out over there. Look how cool this is, our beds are literally open plan. It's so freaking cool. The bathroom over here. A little toilet, the bath. And the sink, guys, this is so sick. Like, just look at this view quickly. Oh my word, it's so cool. Anyways, yeah, we had to cut that surf session short because I have class right now. But yeah, hopefully we get some cool waves tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Hi there everybody, and last night we camped on the beach here. We drove all the back roads and we've packed up now. We've come back to a beautiful little rocky section. Got a broken reef in the water. Lloyd started already plugging, so we're gonna maybe do a bit of artificial plugging, popping, maybe a bit of spooning. And then we're going to throw a couple of baits onto the ledge and hopefully catch a couple of mataharis, maybe the odd yellow spotted kingfish, or even maybe a big speckled snapper. So water's beautiful, very, very clean. We're going to have to fish fluoro, etc. But look out, I think we're going to have some squeals screaming action.
On! Keep throwing a plug, just as you got to the ledge. Oh, get him on the ledge. Lovely stuff, throwing a little 1.5 ounce plug. Oh, let's see, 10.5 foot. Oh, came away. Came away. This is throwing over a ledge. And you gotta pull quite hard to get him off. Hook pulled. We've had a couple of rods out, pension pipes, and it's just calm, flat, blue water. Basically just go through what we're using at the moment. It's our ballistic 4000, and on that we're going to sell a 10.5 foot. Quite a bit of backbone, they've got a ledge running along here. Now the sea is blue and flat, flat, flat. That's why we're struggling with the bait. They need something realistic and sort of lifelike. And just scaling down, going out like this, obviously those little kingies are going up and down, but right up against the shore break with a little bit of white water. Hopefully I can show you guys some of them. There we go, got it on, yeah? Let you scrounge some drop shot. And what I've got a little Malabar. Let's get him back. Cheers, boy. Finally. Same location. I actually had a couple on offs. Little 10.5 foot rods. They're a little bit big for the type of fishing we're doing. An 8 footer or 9 footer would be ideal. Finally go with the stick. Little green spot. Is it? Yeah. Tiny rope. Looks actually quite similar to the yellowfin or the black tip kingy, but you see obviously no black tip there. Mistaken I did with the yellow there, but the green spot, you can see the random green spots around there. Very good live bait actually. I ate that drop shot right down the hatch. Let me chuck it back. Oh, there you go, there you go. Oh, it's a better one. Ooh, that's the one I was looking for.
I had a huge jig in, and I've managed to scrounge one from our buddies. So let's see if that helps the success rate at all. I'm sure it's going to. All the pulls are coming right on top of the reef, and I couldn't get there with that weightness, so I'm just going to put this kingfisher jig head on. And my borrowed drop shot. And let's see if that works.
Hey, lovely! Little GT! Ha, what a surprise! Well, it's been pointed out to me. Look at those teeth. I mean, all GTs have teeth, but that one particularly does look quite nasty. Hey, like a little fish, so much fun. Little box. Cool. Here we go. It's actually amazing. You don't come out from an area like this, it's so full of life. I mean, you just take it for granted. We were just sitting there and didn't even consider fishing like this. And all of a sudden, change tactics, and there's just a wealth of fish that we haven't even tapped this style of fishing. If we came in prepared and did a day like this, we could have so much fun. There we go. Dig it on, proper dig it on. And I'm on straight away. So you always got to be prepared for every eventuality. Water got very clean, could get nothing on the rock and surf. Saw a bit of working water right on the front. Tried the drop shot straight away. Let's get it back, huh? Right. For me, for those who don't know, it's actually supposedly far north for Durban. I think about 10-12 hours north of the Swaziland border. And I mean, we see some of the locals that live there, they're behind there giggling and they can't believe some of the tackle we're using and what we're catching. Well, there we go, guys. Short little drop shot session. Got a jig head too late, unfortunately. Managed to get one green spot. Lloyd got a very nice little TT. So short, quick, innovative session. We did nothing else going on with the rock and surf. Saw a bit of whitewater, tried, and the fish were there. Thanks to Duncan, our cameraman. And yeah, we'll see you next week for some power angling. Cheers, guys.
The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
The number you have dialed has been changed.
Back in our studio, and in today's news